Buddy. I hope you're all doing well and that your week is off to a great start. This week, we are getting into a topic that has already come up a bit on the class discussion board, and we're going to dive a little bit deeper into it this week, and that is call outs and performative activism. So, we're thinking this week about how, call outs and performative activism are two phrases that we see circulate so often, especially in a digital culture. And we're thinking about what do these key words, these key phrases actually mean? What is the impact of their circulation, not only on us as social beings, so in terms of our interpersonal relationships, but also on us individually and how, we've navigated these particular concepts. So, to kick us off, let's first think about how call outs got started. So, it's important to note in the history of call out culture, this really began as a way for Black women to speak back against the different abuses and hostility that they were experiencing in online space. So, that's where we saw the concept of call out culture generate. And then with that, we saw how the dynamics of call outs always involved this, sense of speaking truth to power. So when we think about how that takes shape in terms of what it looks like to speak truth to power and how, that has shifted and evolved over, the course of the last several years, we're thinking about how, events like Me Too, so like the Me Too movement, thinking about conversations around people like R. Kelly, and a variety of celebrities. So it's not limited to these examples, as well as, larger powerful entities like, the VCU administration. So, I mean, that's, on a local level, we could see the ways that call outs have led to generally efforts towards greater accountability for these people in institutions that hold a significant amount of power. But then with that, we also see how callouts take shape even in friend circles, in the networks that you all have. And I'm curious in this conversation, how people conceptualize callouts, what your attitudes about it are, and, your various feelings. Considering, I'm sure that you all have navigated this in a variety of ways. So I think it's important when, we're discussing call outs to think about how, call outs are an effort to name harm. And, they're an effort to name harm in the sense that, folks may say something, folks may do something that they may not necessarily recognize was harmful when they said those things, when they did those things. But call outs could be seen as, essentially this opening to greater dialogue about why those behaviors or, saying particular things can generate harm. So there's a clear connection between intention and impact here. And I say that because I think so often conversations about call outs will get stuck in this realm of, if someone experiences a call out, there's a kind of knee jerk response to note that it wasn't that person's intention. They never meant to, issue any kind of harm or enact any kind of harm. So the conversation can kind of stick there that, it wasn't my intention to do this. But we know, in the conversations we've had in this class, we see the ways that impact has such a profound power as opposed to intention. So thinking about the ways that impact distinguishes itself from intention is really key here, because when someone, gets called out, receives a call out in some way, it doesn't necessarily need to be seen as, you're a bad person. You intended to hurt this person, which so often, dialogues get stunted at. But more so thinking about, it may not have been your intention to, create this form of harm, but the impact is, this. So recognizing how call outs can be this space for, creating an opportunity for greater conversation about what impact looks like. And so often we don't see what the impact of our words and behaviors are because of, our various relationships to privilege and oppression. So it creates blind spots for us in the sense that we just may not know what kind of harm we're causing. So conversation in relation to the call outs is really key. So I also want to share an experience that, I had with a call out that really did shape, my politics, that shaped my life for years to come. And I think demonstrates the ways that call outs can be a great opportunity for conversation. So, I'm 32 now, and when I was about 19 or 20, a friend of mine that was a mentor to me was helping me with, basically organizing different farm worker activism in the Florida area where I grew up. So my friend was an organizer for, a particular social justice group, and, really like had, just a profound amount of experience with activism and was older than me at the time. You know, when I started doing this organizing work as a 19, 20-year-old white woman, I wanted to get as many college students involved in this effort. So, in the South Florida and Central Florida area, there is a huge issue with undocumented folks that work agricultural jobs and work, jobs beyond that, not getting, fair pay from their employers, getting manipulated and abused and whatnot. And so, our efforts were an attempt to, help them get the resources that they needed and whatnot. And in getting a lot of college students involved in this effort, my blind spot was that I needed to help be a part of educating what the model of the organizing work was. So, long story short, a bunch of like charity drives were created around, this particular effort. And the problem with the charity drives was that they were collecting materials that the farm workers did not ask for. So there was no conversation between the students that were doing this work and the community they were intending to support. And, my mentor friend at the time basically just pulled me to the side and called me out and was like, you need to gather your people and you need to educate them on the fact that they need to be in dialogue with the community that, they're intending to support, because right now, the model of activism and organizing that they're promoting is a charity-based model, and, we're attempting to be in solidarity with this community. So, she helped me see the distinction between, what charity and solidarity looked like in this context. And this is not to say that, various forms of charity are not worthwhile, but thinking about in this particular context, we were attempting to build relationships of solidarity with the community. But yeah, so I felt like the effort on my friend's part, this wiser, older person, to pull me to the side and say, hey, you're doing this thing, and it's really reinforcing essentially, different forms of privilege and oppression, in the sense that, you have all of these like white college students that are just moving forward without talking to a community that, they're intending to support. So, you need to talk to these people. That, it really impacted me for years to come. And I think about how it did require a sense of, profound friendship. And, I saw it as, such an act of kindness that, she would take the time to educate me on this stuff. So it goes to show that, call outs can be this portal to, greater understandings of the kind of work that, you're doing in a social justice realm, the kind of support that you're intending to offer different communities and whatnot. So I say this to note that, I think that in this particular story, I did have a knee-jerk response when, my friend pulled me to the side as a, 19 year old where, I was like, damn, I messed up. I did not intend to do this. And, my heart was in the right place. Like, I felt like an idiot. And I think that I needed to move beyond that knee jerk response of, damn, I messed up, to really think about what was this feedback that I was being offered? How would that feedback be able to help me grow? And, how like her call out was an act of friendship. So, yeah, so all that said, I think, we often in a digital culture, in contemporary culture, tend to stop at the knee jerk response, which is totally understandable. It's very much human nature to get stuck in that space. But I think that, it speaks to the ways that we're socialized in, like looking at this from a macro perspective, we tend to be socialized to see things in a very either or lens, through a very either or lens, in the sense that we want to be right, we don't want to be wrong. It's either you're wrong or you're right, when that, as we know, that's not the way the world works often. But when it comes to social justice conversations, I think that people can feel such a pressure to be seen as being in the realm of the right, not the right wing, but being in the realm of in the know, having all the answers and not messing up and being seen as a problematic person. But life is so nuanced, and we're all on, our various learning paths when it comes to this stuff. And not only, in terms of our relationship to privilege and oppression, are we unlearning various biases that have been ingrained in us that we don't necessarily know how they're showing up for us or how we're complicit in reinforcing them until someone may call us out. We're also on this, path of learning how to be supportive to, different types of folks, and, to be a more compassionate person. And, part of that is making space for the feedback and whatnot. So this conversation is very much intertwined with the notion of performative activism. So we hear this phrase so often now, and we, especially this summer, when it came to the Black Squares fiasco, that definitely was a phrase that popped up a whole bunch. And, thinking about how this week one of the authors we're looking at, Christy DeGallery, talks about, how the Black Squares did evidence this performative internet trend, in the sense that it was a very symbolic gesture. And we saw many people, people on our class discussion board have even talked about, family members and different celebrities that you witnessed, where there was no conversation about the BLM movement, before or after the Black Square was posted, no context in relation to the square, but they just posted the square. And so it felt like a very empty symbolic gesture. But then at the same time, we saw many people post the square and then use that as an entry point for learning more about how to support the BLM movement, because they realized that, or, at first their intention was to be in solidarity with the movement, but they didn't realize that posting the square was actually suppressing BLM updates because they were using the hashtag. So this, is very much connected to another one of the pieces we're looking at this week about commodity activism. And commodity activism would refer to, the purchasing of products to evidence one's politics, and, the buck stopping with the purchase of, particular products to evidence one's politics. So this goes to say that, if you want to, buy particular products to, support a cause, like, that's awesome. And, the critique in this particular piece is thinking about when activism is only equated with the purchase of commodity products, how we need to dive a little bit deeper in exploring, how that is a symbolic gesture and how the purchasing of those products can be paired with, engaging in vital conversations or, finding, some form of, social justice work that speaks to you. So it's interesting in considering, how performative activism, if we understand it as this series of symbolic gestures where, the expression of one's politics is limited to, a post or a purchase, we see how that could, be contradictory to what we were just talking about related to seeing social justice as an ongoing learning process, an ongoing conversation to be having with folks. Because if you just make a post or make a purchase, it can evidence the sense of, I just want people to know that I'm in the right. I know, what's up. I know what's going on. This is the be all end all of me evidencing to, my social media networks and my friends that I've got it all covered and I understand these issues. But we see how it's very important to be continuously learning and having conversations about this stuff because, like I noted, you don't necessarily always know when you're causing harm. And I saw a great meme yesterday, actually, that was a Venn diagram that was like those of us that have caused harm and those of us that have been harmed, and then all of us were situated in the middle. So it goes to show that essentially we all have caused harm in some particular way in our lives. We all may have experienced harm in some small or large way, and recognizing that we all have something to learn from the process of callouts, from the process of engaging in social justice education in digital spaces. It's important to think about all these things and also be thinking about the ways that callouts, of course, can be used for vindictive purposes, the ways that they can, this particular strategy for social justice education can be misused in a variety of ways, and thinking about how do those experiences help us greater understand the necessity of creating more dialogues and having that greater space for navigating conflict, for understanding the way that harm is caused. So I look forward to talking with you all on the discussion board.